Good evening, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to tonight's Town Hall with the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston. I'm Elise Hand. I'll be your moderator this evening. And for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, a few items to go over before we get started. So earlier this evening, several Nova Scotians received a phone call, an invitation to join the conversation this evening. And those who have chosen to participate will have an opportunity to speak with the Premier directly tonight and ask their questions. If you are participating by phone and you would like to ask a question, simply hit *3 and you'll be added to the queue. You'll be added to the lineup to talk to the Premier. We also want to let everyone know that we are broadcasting live tonight on the Nova Scotia Government Facebook page, and we are live, also on the YouTube channel. And for you, those who are watching this evening, you will also have the opportunity to participate by asking your questions via email. So if you're watching us online right now and you do have a question for the Premier, you can send an email to nstownhall@novascotia.ca. That's nstownhall@novascotia.ca. All right, let's get things started. So for those on the phones, now is the time to hit *3 if you have a question for Premier Houston. And before we move to our questions, let's hear from the Premier. We'll hand it over to Premier Houston.
Thanks so much. Good evening, folks. Look forward to talking with you tonight. Thanks for tuning in, and I'm hoping we'll have a good discussion. I look forward to taking your questions. If you'd like to ask me a question tonight, press *3. And we'll get through as many as we can. Looking forward to some frank discussion tonight. It's a difficult time in the world. The President of the United States is openly talking about an economic war on Canada. We're all feeling that stress, but there is a plan. The government has a plan, and we will get through it. Whatever is thrown our way. And here at home and in Nova Scotia, well, it's a politically charged world. Political tensions are high for sure, and I'm happy to talk through that and separate, put any facts on the table as are necessary. But through it all, we try to live and be guided by one simple, reliable compass: do the next right thing. Whatever you face, do the next right thing. That's in front of you. That's the way we try to govern, and certainly the way I try to live. And some of you will be familiar with that saying. Anyway, there's lots to talk about tonight. The lines are open. Press *3 and let's get going. I'll give you my thoughts, perspectives, some of the reasoning behind some of the things government is doing. But I'm always interested in hearing from you. And while we get started here and get some questions in the queue, I'd like to give you just a little bit of update on some matters that I know are important to you. It's been a busy few weeks. Last week, we introduced our latest budget, and it's big. There are big numbers in the budget, big investments, significant investments in you and your family. In fact, more than $500 million in tax cuts that will benefit you and your family. This is the largest tax cuts in the province's history. We're cutting the HST by 1%, and that's starting on April 1st. We're increasing the basic personal exemption amount from around $8,800 to $11,800, somewhere in that range. It's a big increase in the basic personal exemption. And with the average Nova Scotian family, they'll save more than $1,000 just this year from those tax cuts. We wish we could go further, but at least we're finally going in the right direction, and taxes are going down. The budget also expands the school lunch program to an additional 77 schools, so that over 100,000 students will have access to a healthy meal at school. This is huge. And soon, all Nova Scotians over the age of 65 will qualify for the free Shingles vaccine. This matters. Employees, patients, and visitors at Nova Scotia Health hospital sites and the IWK will no longer pay for parking with this budget too, the passage of this budget. And in some ways, this is a little thing, but it's a big thing. And I hope it sends a big message, even the free parking. And over $70 million in investment in expanding cell phone service across the rural areas of our beautiful province. This is a big deal. It's an important step. I know it will have an impact on so many people. Yesterday, I tabled a bill that's the first step to removing all interprovincial trade barriers. this is a very big first step, and it's gained lots of attention nationally. Certainly, national news has covered this, and Canadians from coast to coast are watching what's happening here from Nova Scotia. It's a big first step. So I'm happy to answer any questions about any of these initiatives or anything else you'd like to talk about. If you press *3, you can get in the queue, and I'd love to chat. I'm looking forward to that tonight. So thank you, and let's get going.
All right. Yes, let's get started. Thank you, Premier. First up tonight, we have caller Eric Jensen, and Premier Eric wants to ask you about when you plan to have a balanced budget here in Nova Scotia.
Are you? Is Eric on the line, or was that a send-in?
I think we're waiting on Eric.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, hey, Eric. Yeah, we can hear you. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. How about you?
I'm doing good, buddy. Really good.
Attaboy. Listen, I hear all the spending that you're doing, and I support a lot of those initiatives. But my bigger concern is the finances of the province, and whether or not we're ever going to see a balanced budget again. As we get more in debt, we have to pay more interest, and we just go further in debt, and it makes it very difficult to invest in the province. So, do you have any plan of when or when the budget will be balanced again?
Yeah, so thank you, Eric. This is an important question, the long-term financial stability of the province, let's call it. So look, this budget has a big deficit. In this budget, it's about a $900 million deficit. Now, that's a big number. About $200 million of that is a contingency, so we will be prepared to respond to the tariffs should they come into play. I understand breaking news today, those is pushed another month now, so we'll continue to work to get to a no tariff situation. But you're right, it's a deficit this year, and deficit budgets forecasted out for the next couple of years as well. But I want you to know that in the first three budgets we tabled, they were all deficits. The budget, you table the budget, it's what you think might happen that year, it's what you're budgeting to happen. And at the end of the year, you see what actually did happen. So in the first 3 years, we tabled deficits, and I think if you add all those deficits up, it was something in the range of $1.5 billion. So it's a big number of budgeted deficits. But when we looked at the actual numbers for those first 3 years, it wasn't deficits, and it was small surpluses. And actually, if you add up the actuals for those first 3 years, the actual surplus was about $500 million, somewhere in that range. So what I share that with you to tell you is, like, we understand the need to be fiscally responsible. We understand the need to manage you table the budget, and then you manage and you try to do better as you go along. But when I come back to the fact that we're tabling the deficit to start with, it's just a reminder of how important it is to grow the economy so our revenues are up. This is why we've been talking so much about the need to really focus on our resource development, take the know out of Nova Scotia, get some projects going to grow the economy. So I understand, a concern that you may have about we keep tabling deficits and what does that mean. But part of the deficit this time is because of the tax breaks. So we're very clear as a government putting money back in the hands of Nova Scotians. But we feel the pressure and obligation to get to a balanced budget, to get to surpluses. Hopefully, we think we can do that by really focusing on growing the economy through resource development. We have incredible potential in resource development, whether it's green hydrogen. Green hydrogen could add about $5 billion to our economy over the next 5 to 7 years. Wind in general, offshore wind, onshore wind, that could add also $5 to $7 billion to our economy over the next 5 or 6 years. In the mining space, we're rich in uranium. The world is really looking for uranium right now. We're rich in that. We're rich in lithium. The lithium demand is through the roof. So there's one potential lithium deposit that could add $6 billion to our economy, to our GDP. So just in the green hydrogen, in the wind, in just that one lithium thing, I just rolled off about $15 billion of potential economic activity over the next 5 to 7 years in a province with an overall economic activity GDP of about 45 billion. So you can see that that's a big potential. So we're investing in Nova Scotians. We're doing what we can. We always wish we could do a little more as a government, but we're doing what we can. We are doing a little bit more than we can. Actually, that's how we get the deficits. But we always wish we could do more. But I just want you to know that there is a focus on growing the economy so we can get out of this. But it's a few years away. I appreciate the question, Eric.
Yes, thanks, Eric, and thanks, Premier. Our next question is from Louis St. Clair, and Premier Louis has a question on how you work with the media.
Hi, Louis.
Hello, Premier. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you doing?
Good. So you seem to be doing a pretty good job. The only thing is that on the news in the evening, we usually hear about seems like the government is kind of throttling back some of the information that the media is looking for, or even the Auditor General seemed to reverted some of the what you were trying to throttle back some of the information that the Auditor General. It's just everything looks good, but you seem to be keeping some matters from Nova Scotians. I'm just wondering if that's why is there a need to keep some information from Nova Scotia? I know that we don't have 100% of access to the business, but if you're doing right, you shouldn't have to try to keep your cards that close to your chest.
Yeah, no, thank you, Louis. This is a really important issue. I'm really glad you raised it, and there's no cards close to the chest. We're open, we're transparent. Myself, just yesterday, I did 3 media availabilities, 3 different times where I sat down and took questions from reporters, and the same with my ministers. There's a legislation before the House that would kind of modernize a couple things. We did a scan across the country to see how things operate in different provinces and territories, and tried to look at best practices. I think if you look back over the last, 5 or 6 years for sure, you'd have definitely heard, the opposition, the NDP, the Liberals in their time in opposition, complaining that the legislature doesn't work properly. We need to make changes to the legislature, and now those exact same people that, as we try to make some changes, some modernization of the legislature, are complaining that we're making changes. So it's kind of the nature of politics, I guess. If you do something, they complain. If you don't do anything, they complain. That's kind of it's kind of a sad reality of where we're at. But very, very specifically with the media, we did make a change, and this change is being being reported as a negative thing. I don't really think the change is. So what the change is, just so you know, Louis, and listeners know, is generally when the House is in session, so it's a few weeks a year. After question period, the Premier would come out of the chamber and immediately take a media scrum right on that spot. That scrum is limited to reporters who happen to be on hand physically in the House and can participate in that. But as the world changes, we know that not all media outlets can have reporters at the legislature, but they still have questions. It might be hard for a reporter from Pictou County, where I live, or from Yarmouth, or from Sydney, or from Amherst, or you name the spot that's outside of Halifax. It might be hard for them to get a reporter to Province House to ask. So we said, look, you know what? We'll move that. We'll move the physical location of my media scrum probably about 60 feet, I would say, directly across the street into the media room. The media room has technology capabilities to take phone-in questions from reporters, to take video. Like, there's all kinds of technology in there. So what we've done is actually made ourselves more accessible to more media to answer more questions. And I found it interesting today. I probably sat in front of the media for about 20 minutes and answer questions about why I was avoiding the media as I was answering their questions. So anyways, it's an interesting world. But what I want you to know is we have great respect for the Auditor General. We made some proposed changes that, the Auditor General and others said, that's a little bit too far. We're not that comfortable. So we listened to that and we take them out. I don't, it got to the point where it was clear to me that the proposals were shaking the confidence of Nova Scotians. And any public policy that shakes the confidence of Nova Scotians is bad policy. So whether it's well-intentioned or maybe even right in some people's views, if it shakes the confidence of Nova Scotians, then it's bad policy. So this was clearly shaking the confidence of Nova Scotians. So we did away with it. We're not going to do it. Another piece of legislation has to do with the freedom of information. We have a good relationship with the commissioner. We made some changes that were actually in the spirit of what they were asking for, but they said, well, could you just tweak that a little bit? So we'll do that. This is the way good government works. You put legislation forward. When you hear from people on how to make it better, you should do that. If you hear from people that it's shaking their confidence, then you should bail on it. So it's difficult for me to hear you say that you're a little concerned that maybe we're holding something back. I think that makes me a little bit sad, to be honest. We work very hard, and we have a great, our freedom of information request is the response time is the best in the country. So if you ask the government under the freedom of information process, the information, you'll get that quicker than anywhere else in the country on average. So we have a good, and our Auditor General, the recommendations, I think the Auditor General said, like, the recommendations that come out of audit reports, we follow them at an extremely high rate. We clean audit opinions, so it's all open, it's all transparent. But right now we are moving the media scrums about 60 feet, and that's causing some concern for those who are used to doing those media scrums, I guess 60 feet back the other way. They're not. So anyways, I hope we'll get through that, because it's really important that you have confidence in the system. But I just want you to know on a very personal level, I sit in front of the media and take questions on a regular basis. I also take them at Tim Hortons and hockey rinks and on streets, and I think it's really important that those interactions happen, because that's where I learn what's happening. Even tonight, this type of interaction is good for me, so that's why we do it. But thank you for the kind words on our performance. I really appreciate that. And also thank you for raising, something that's been maybe bothering you a little bit, and I hope you feel a little bit better about it after this. But thanks for calling in, Louis. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Louis. And next up, Premier, we have Jim from Cole Harbour, who has a question on Halifax bridge tolls. Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Good day, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thanks for calling in.
Sure. I must say, concerning the removal of the tolls on the bridges, and that's a very unfortunate decision. Specifically, I think the money would be better used to be proactive in snow removal and filling up potholes, which we have in numerous areas in HRM right now, which are in really bad condition. So that's my express feeling on those items. And again, with removing the bridge tolls, it's going to cost to now look after the maintenance of the bridges, and not only that, folks that work at the bridges in the toll booths and whatnot are losing their jobs. So that's my opinion on that matter. So I'd appreciate if you could speak to it.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. This is an important discussion, so I really appreciate it. So I guess I would say a couple of things. Yes, when people go across the bridge and pay a toll, it does collect money for the government. Some of that money does go to, as you said, salaries for people that are working there. Some of it goes to administration. Some of it goes to IT. Some of it goes to, it's money that's collected, for sure. Money that's collected by the government in the form of a toll is just a tax. And where this is all coming from, somebody asked. In fact, they asked me in question period today, where is this coming from? Nobody asked for this. Where it's all coming from is this was the last toll in the province. There used to be a toll on the Cobequid Pass. My government got rid of that a couple years ago. If you go back, there used to be a toll to get to Cape Breton. You had to pay a toll to get on on the island, but that's gone too. This was the last toll in the province, and I just thought that it was inherently unfair. That if you live in Fairview, where I grew up, and work in Dartmouth Crossing, that you had to pay a toll to get back and forth to work. I thought that was unfair. It's the only one in the province. Or if you live in Dartmouth where you do, and you had to go to appointments in Halifax at a healthcare facility or otherwise, you had to pay a toll. But nowhere else in the province you did. It just seemed unfair. So we said we'll get rid of that toll. There'll be no tolls in the province. It's not some people pay and some don't. It's across the board, no tolls in the province. And that means that just like every other provincial road, I think the potholes around HRM would be, a lot of those would be municipal. But the provincial roads are all, the province is responsible for them, and that's the way it is. Our roads budget this year is about $500 million, and that could probably be a lot, bigger than that with a lot of roads to maintain. So I just think. In the grand scheme of things, the toll is just, and I also say parking at hospitals. These are in the category of one more thing. In a time when people are stretched financially, and the cost of a lot of things, cost of everything, just piles up. And then you got to pay a toll to go to work. And then you got to pay to park at the hospital when you want to go see a loved one. It's just one more thing. And I just thought, as a government, those are a couple of the one more things that we could take away from those Nova Scotians and just accept it for what it is. It's a provincial responsibility, and you're either going to toll everything or you're going to toll nothing. And we decided that we'd toll nothing. But I hope that gives you some insight as to what the thought process was on that, Jim. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, and thanks, Premier. Next up, we have Deborah. Deborah's from Gulliver's Cove, and she is wondering about and wants to know more about natural gas development in Nova Scotia.
Hi, Deborah.
Hello. Good evening. I was listening to the news the other day, and I just caught a little bit about the fracking that you want to do for the lithium mines.
They're on the same. They're in the same category of natural resource development, but the fracking would be for natural gas. So, but let me speak to that in general, and then you can, unless you want me to be very specific on one of those two, I'm happy to speak to it in general on resource development. But we do have legislation before the House, and we are sincere on lifting the bans. So there are certain bans in the province. There's a ban on uranium mining. There's a ban on fracking, natural gas exploration and extraction. So I think that outright bans like that are lazy public policy. I think, you take the bans off, and then on specific projects, you have adult discussions about, can it be done safely? What's the impact? And you look at specific projects because they're all unique. So there will still be, of course, environmental assessments. Of course, there'll be community engagement. Of course, there'll be a process for that to make sure that it's safe and not harmful. But here's why I think this is important, that we get to the stage where we can have the adult discussions and develop some of our natural resources. Right now, we import natural gas, most of it from the United States. And so, that's been convenient, I guess. It's a little little different now with the way the world's kind of changing. But within Nova Scotia, we have under our feet somewhere in the range of enough natural gas to provide for our needs for 200 years. It's right here. It's already here. It's just under our feet. So I think we owe it to Nova Scotians to have a look at making sure we can use that safely. And imagine what that would do to our economy. For years and years and decades and generations, really, we've been content to send our children to Alberta or other areas and let them work out there in these industries. But that's not okay. If they can do it safely in Newfoundland and in Alberta and Saskatchewan and other parts of Canada, then surely to goodness it can be done safely here too. But we have to have those discussions, and we have incredible potential. And if we don't do it, we continue to risk our economy. We had the first call was about when are we going to balance the budget. We need to recognize that we rely on transfer payments that come through the federal government, but the money that goes into that pot that we're drawing from through transfer payments, the money goes into that pot from provinces like Alberta who are doing natural resource development, and so they can do it and make the money there. And then we just collect some of it. It's just we have the potential. We can change the future of our provincial economy in a very positive way. We can do it safely, so we should have those discussions. So I understand the little bit, that it can be a little scary, I guess. I want to assure you that there'll be a process to make sure it's safe, but I also know that it's time. It's time to look at what is possible and take the province towards it. So I hope that helps, and the process will be there.
All right, thanks, Premier. Thanks, Deborah. Just a reminder to folks listening, watching tonight, that if you are in the queue, you can hit *3 on your phone, and that will allow you to potentially, if we have time tonight, talk to the Premier, ask him a question. So again, *3 if you're on the line and have a question for the Premier. Okay, moving along. Next up, we have an email from Christine Jewell. And Premier, this is what Christine wants to know. She writes, Premier, will you stay vigilant and remove U.S. liquor and goods from the shelves of Nova Scotia stores once tariffs are in place?
Hi, Christine, and thank you for writing in and for following along tonight. The threat of the U.S. tariff. So I understand today that there's been it's been pushed again, from the March into another 30 days. So that's a good thing. Obviously, we want to get to a situation where there's no tariff and no longer a threat of tariffs hanging over us. We're trying to get to that place as a country. So I'm on Team Canada, and we're working hard with the federal government and the other premiers to try and show the decision makers in the United States, and primarily the president seems to be his own person, make his own mind up. But we're trying to get to as close to the president as we can and the decision makers, and show them that the tariffs are bad for Americans, bad for Nova Scotians, bad for Canadians. So we continue to build that case, and we hope we get to a place where there's just no tariffs and no threat of them. And we'll continue to work towards that, and I'll certainly do whatever I can. But this has also been kind of a bit of a wake-up call for our country. And so we've received that wake-up call here in Nova Scotia. That's why from Nova Scotia, we're leading the charge to try to get rid of the interprovincial trade barriers, to open up the rest of Canada to our companies and really get trade going. Incredible opportunity. Nova Scotia province, just over 1 million people in a country of 41 million. So that's a big market. We can add big opportunity for our companies. So we're focusing on that. We're also looking for other customers, not just the United States, but other countries to diversify to other parts of the world. We continue to do that for our products, seafood, our forest products, our agriculture products, our Nova Scotia products. So we'll continue to look for that. And at the same time, if the tariffs come, we need to be, as a country, prepared to respond to them. So that's, counter tariffs, so we put tariffs on them. That's kind of the federal government. We're supportive of their plan there. There is a plan, and we're supportive of that. But also non-tariff measures. So when it looked like these tariffs would come into place, Nova Scotia was the first province to respond and say, this is what we're going to do. And part of it was, as you say, taking the American products off the shelves at the liquor corporation. And we're prepared to do that. We're prepared to take other measures, making sure that we kind of limit the access to procurement opportunities in Nova Scotia for American companies. There's all kinds of other things we can do. To answer your question, if it comes to pass that the United States puts tariffs on Canada, and again we're working hard to make sure it doesn't. But if it comes to pass that they do, then we will respond as a country. We will respond as a province, and I assure you that part of that response will be exactly what you're talking about, taking those American products off the shelves at the Liquor Corporation.
All right. Thanks for your email, Deborah, and thanks, Premier. Next up, we have Alice. Alice is from Dartmouth, and we're going to move into health now. She has a question about the shingles vaccine. Alice.
Yeah, I missed what you said about the shingles. When is the vaccine going to be passed?
Yeah, hi, Alice. So thanks for tuning in. So that was the shingles vaccine will be free for those 65 or older. I think the date is April 1st, but so it's part of the budget. So there is a budget before the House of Assembly right now, when the legislature is in session, and we're talking about a lot of things, a lot of bills in there. Talking about other things too, but we're focused. The government is focused. Your premier is focused on getting the budget passed. And with the passage of that budget, which would hopefully be over the next few weeks, but certainly by April 1st, we hope that by April 1st, that would be free for everyone who's over 65 years old. But so it's that's my expectation. Obviously, the passage of the budget, it could be delayed if the opposition were to filibuster, delay, or use some other procedural tactics. The opposition has control over how long the legislature sits and when bills pass, and so. But it's our goal that we pass that budget, and that is free to people over 65 by April 1st. Hope that helps, Alice.
Thanks, Alice. And next, we're going to head over to Dartmouth. We have a question from France, or it might be Francis. I do know we're France, so it could be France. This is about interprovincial trade barriers. So, Premier, we will get you connected with France or Francis.
Okay. How are you? Good evening.
I'm fine, thank you. And it's Francis.
Okay, Francis. How are you? Thanks for tuning in.
Like the same. Yeah. Yes, it's a question about the interprovincial tariffs, which have been going on so long and don't seem to be doing any good at all.
No.
And in fact, they seem really extremely medieval. And it's ridiculous we can't get, say, BC cheese or wines or, I don't know. It's prevention for no real reason, as far as one can see, except possibly getting votes from some people in some places. But I know you've made a start on it, but do you think you'll ever get to the end of it?
Well, thank you, and I think the description as medieval is probably pretty accurate. It's certainly something that's been talked about for a long time, and there's been no action on it. It's foolish in many ways. So you said cheese, but I mean, I could give you example after example after example of just kind of craziness that has been built into the system. And the one that always kind of just drives me is if a Nova Scotian company could make a frozen pizza, and if they put meat on that frozen pizza, then it's good enough for Nova Scotians, provincially inspected, and they can sell it to Nova Scotians. But since it has meat on it, it would require a federal inspection before it could be sold in New Brunswick. So that's the type of thing, or anywhere else. Like and the federal inspection is hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, so it's just not practical for most companies. But imagine a rule like that says something is safe for Nova Scotians, but not safe for anyone else in Canada. I mean, and I could give you an example. It's just crazy. So what we've said is we have a bill before the legislature, and at some point it'll come for debate. But the opposition is not wanting to discuss things like that just yet. They're still on where I talk to the media is kind of their focus right now. But at some point it'll get to actual things that kind of make a difference in the lives of Nova Scotians, like the interprovincial trade removal and the bill that's before the House. It has a formal title, but I have just a kind of a working title for it. I just call it Good Enough for Canadians, then Good Enough for Canadians. So good enough for Nova Scotians, good enough for New Brunswickers and Ontarians, and on, right? So, so the deal is that we will at some point pass this legislation here in Nova Scotia. But other provinces have to pass the same or similar, because we cannot get into a situation where we open up Nova Scotia, and maybe for use wine as an example, and we open it up, and an Ontario company can sell their wine in Nova Scotia, but the Nova Scotia company can't sell it in Ontario. So it's a two-way street. So I've issued the challenge. We have the legislation before, and it is getting national recognition, and even I think down in parts of the States they were focused on this legislation that's coming out of Nova Scotia, and the leadership that Nova Scotia is showing on this. So I've said to the other premiers, let's get on with this. Let's get going. So Ontario said straight away, yeah, we're in. There are a number of other provinces that have reached out for more information or want to know a bit more. There'll be a couple holdouts, but I'm hoping that we can get some momentum on this, and even those provinces that are initially holdouts, that just the public pressure of common sense just will bring them along, because we have to do it. We can't. It's just. There's a company in Nova Scotia that makes a medical device, and this is a really kind of difficult thing to hear. They said it's easier to sell in the United States. They have no other Canadian business. They would love to sell in Canada, but they don't have the time or the energy to deal with all the nuances of each jurisdiction. So instead, they just sell into the United States, where it's just the FDA approves it and the way they go. So that's hard to get the head around. So we pass legislation here. We put it before the House. We'll look forward to getting it passed, and then I will assure you that I will be applying tremendous pressure to the other provinces and territories to get with the program and catch up to 2025 and bring us out of the medieval times. I might borrow that expression from you, Francis, but I appreciate you joining in tonight.
All right. Yes, thanks, Francis. And our next question, we're heading over to Cape Breton to hear from Patricia. And Patricia is on the line, Premier, wanting to know more about government decision and the decision-making process. So, Patricia, we'll turn it over to you.
Hi, Patricia.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for joining in tonight.
More of my question, it's hard to have, when it seems like our rights are being taken away, we don't have a choice, or do we get to give it in or voice concern on changes the government implements? I'm sure a lot of Canadians think that's not okay.
You broke up a little bit, but if I understand, you're concerned about your ability as a citizen to have input into legislation the government is putting forward. Is that a fair summary?
Right. Like, for an example, when COVID came out, you had to get the vaccination. And we were pretty much forced, because if you didn't take it, you would lose your job. And you can't say we weren't forced, because we were. If we lose our job, it's because we chose not to take it and put into our body what we didn't want to. It's our body, it's our choice. That's only fair. And as a government working for Canadians, it's only fair that we get to give an input on changes they're going to make. But things just get passed without us having a say.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for that. So certainly, listen, the COVID times were tough times. There's no question about that. I think we all have a lot of emotions over that whole period of time, for sure. But what I would say to you, in general, like, you know, the pandemic was unique. It just was. But in general, so there is a process for people to have input and interaction to the government, and certainly as Premier, I'm not sure that there's been a Premier that's been more accessible through avenues like this tonight, through just trying to be out around and having people stop me on the street and talk to me. That's one thing. You also have a local MLA, a representative who feeds stuff through, and certainly for, you know, the members of my caucus, I listen carefully to them. And then when an idea gets to the point where it might become a law, there's a process. It gets drafted as a bill, it gets tabled in the legislature, then it gets read for second reading where members would debate it. And then in Nova Scotia, we have something that's very unique. I think it's the only one in the country, but it's an actual committee where Nova Scotians, everyday Nova Scotians, such as yourself, can have a say directly to MLAs. And this committee has traditionally been called the Law Amendments Committee, where people could appear and say, we like this, or we don't like it, or we want you to do this. Now, we are changing the name of that committee to Public Bills Committee or Engagement Committee or something. But in practice, it will still be the same. Nova Scotians will show up and they'll have their say on the piece of legislation. It won't be amended at that committee. I just think one of the reasons for that change is that it's not appropriate for it to be amended there, where there's only 8 MLAs on that committee. There's 55 MLAs. The proper place to amend a bill is in front of all 55, not 8. But the public engagement part, where you could come and have your say, that's wide open, and that remains. And then there's a committee of the whole who can be amended there. So all along the way, I always encourage you to, reach out to your MLA, participate in formats like this, like you are tonight. But I as a government, I think if you look in Nova Scotia, and kind of if you look back over history, it's kind of rare for a government to make changes to a bill that is before that. Once they introduce it, they usually kind of stick to their guns and push it through. It's rare to see changes. It's rare to see changes when there's in Nova Scotia. It has been rare to see changes when you have a majority government. We actually have a supermajority right now, so a supermajority, making changes or what they say, backing down from things is what they say. It's rare, but it's not rare for my government because it's who I am. We listen carefully, and when somebody shows me that's is a better way to do it, or as I said off the top, do the next right thing. The next right thing might be to make an amendment to the bill. We do it. Now, in Ottawa, in the House of Commons, bills get amended all the time. It's just been kind of rare in Nova Scotia. But so I want you to know that there's lots of space for you to have your say. And I, as Premier, might not always agree with you, but I'll always listen to you, and I'll tell you when I don't agree with you. But the COVID times were different. But the legislation that goes forward before the House or ideas you have on things, that there's formats for that, and we respect those and we listen carefully to them. So I hope that helps, and you can certainly reach out anytime.
Great. Thanks, Patricia. Thank you, Premier. Heather is up next. Heather's from Upper Sackville, and Heather wants to talk about parking at hospitals. So Heather, take it away.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, Premier. Thank you for doing this tonight. I appreciate your openness and willingness to talk to your constituents. I just want to say I really appreciated when you came around to the hospitals as well. I am a healthcare worker, and I really appreciated the roundtable discussions that you had throughout the province. I think that was amazing. It was a great step. And my question around parking is, as you know, parking downtown is at a premium, and to park at the hospital is, last time I checked, it was like $14.75 a day. And I know if I was going in for a shift in town, if you were able to get parking in an employee space, you'd have to be there at like 7 a.m. But I also have medical appointments that I have to go to, say at the IWK with my son. And as it is right now, it's really hard to get parking. So if parking is free for everyone, how will that be addressed if people are coming downtown and they want to, they don't have an appointment? How about students at Dal? You know, they're very close by. How do we ensure that the right people are parking? And how do we ensure that patients, like as a healthcare worker, I think that patient parking should come first. There's nothing more that causes more anxiety than trying to find a parking spot after you've waited, 6 months for an appointment and having to drive in circles till you find a spot. And taking the monetary out of this situation, it's going to open it up to just everybody. So I was just wondering how you plan on putting that into place. I appreciate the idea of it, but practically speaking, I'm just wondering if you have a plan for that.
No, thank you, Heather. And I enjoyed those roundtables, and maybe it's time to do another circuit of them, to be honest, because they were so helpful. But I thank you for what you do, and your colleagues. You have a tough job, and but I hope you feel supported by the government, and I hope you see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. We'll continue to invest in healthcare and look for ways to support you. So, say that first off. On the the parking, I guess the financial aspect of the parking, for sure, it's when you have a patient in the hospital, part of that healing and recovery process is being surrounded by loved ones and having people around you. So we don't want people to not be able to go, or to maybe not go every day because of the cost, or we just don't want it to be a factor in the decision. And certainly for our workers there, we want to support them too. But so when the budget passes, this will come into play again. That would be April 1st. So some of they'll work through the details to make sure it's not abused. The parking spots are dear. We only have so many of them, and we don't want the use of those abused. And I think that's what you're getting at. So it could be. I'm not really sure where they landed on that, but I know a couple of ideas they had of getting a ticket, but getting it validated. That was one thing. But I'd have to get back to you, Heather, on where they landed. But I just want to say to you that we are conscious of the fact that we want those spots used for people who are in the healthcare facility, whether working or visiting or there for an appointment themselves. And we don't want, it's not supposed to be extra parking for the local merchants or whatever the case may be. So they are looking at different options as to how they control that. So I don't know where they landed, but I just want your concern is noted and registered, and we're looking at a process to get over that. But thanks for what you do, and thanks for tuning in tonight.
Thank you so much, Heather. Right next, we have Ivan. Ivan has a question about negotiations with the United States administration.
Hi, Ivan. Ivan, thanks for joining us.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing good, buddy. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, I'm kind of concerned about every time we turn the TV on here, we always see Trump on there. On the 51st state. There he puts all these tariffs onto us. And it seems like to me that he thinks that our politicians over here are stupid, So I just would like to know how you fellas are going to handle this man, just to kind of calm him down. I think he's awful rude. But I appreciate everything you folks have done. I know you're doing your best, but I really don't like hearing him on TV. So I'd like to know just about how you fellas are going to handle that part.
Yeah, so thank you, Ivan, and you're certainly not alone in your feelings, and I may even share them myself. But we're trying to, have a professional approach to it, and certainly, the federal government, and give a shout out to Minister LeBlanc, Minister Jolie, and others there that are working so hard on this file, and the premiers as well. Me and as a group, but personally, I've been down there a couple times, and I guess I'd say a couple of things. The president, sometimes it's hard to know what he's trying to achieve and where he's going with things. So we try to anticipate that. It's pretty difficult, but we also take him at his face value in what he says. So what he has said is that he's concerned about the border. So Canada, as a country, has made a significant investment in protecting the border. I think that benefits Canadians as well. And it's a $1.3 billion that investment that the federal government has made in protecting the border. I think that's really important. And I think we've made incredible progress there. He said he's concerned about fentanyl specifically. So there's been a big push to address that, and I think we've made some progress on that. He said he's concerned about Canada meeting its NATO obligation. And I just like getting fentanyl out of our community is something we should all want. It's a good thing for everyone. Meeting the NATO commitments, investing in our defense, also really important. So there are certain things that he has said, and we're responding to what he has said in a positive way. And I think the president and his administration are seeing that response. So they delayed the tariffs by 30 days. Now today they've come out and delayed them again. So we want to get to a place where they don't have them at all, and that's no threat hanging over. But in the meantime, so the first thing is we have to respond to what he says, and I believe that's happening. The second thing is we have to be prepared to respond in a way that would get his attention should he put tariffs on. And I've said before that I think it's a little bit like, he may just need to touch that hot stove to realize it's hot. And that's why we need to be prepared as a country to respond with our own tariffs and our own counter-tariff measures that would have an impact. So those are two things that are happening. But I would say to you from my time in there, my trips down there over the last couple of weeks and talking to governors and senators and elected people, but business people and even people on the street. The knowledge of the and the importance of the relationship between Canada and the United States is something that is still respected. They know that this is an important relationship, and the people who we're talking to, elected officials and otherwise, they agree with us, and they're trying to figure out what might be the next move the president might make too. So, but hang in there. There's a lot of there's a lot of effort and focus on managing the relationship and hopefully getting to a non-tariff place for the long term where the threat's gone. There's a lot of effort. There's a lot of people that care working on that, and there is a plan to respond. So I agree with you. It's causing stress. But we're focused on that. We'll take steps to protect ourselves. Either way, it's for the good. Either way, getting rid of interprovincial trade, looking for other markets. These things are all will have a long-term positive impact. So maybe there's a wake-up call and we're responding to it. But it's a difficult situation because of the personality involved. But I agree with you.
Thank you, Premier, and thanks, Ivan. And that does take us to the end of our hour with the Premier. Thank you, everyone, for your questions this evening. And before we wrap up, I'll throw it back to the Premier one more time for some final words. Premier.
Thanks so much. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and thanks for the questions. And I know we'll get back to those that we missed your question now. But I just want to say, it's a pretty politically charged world right now. And there's a lot of stress around, and I feel that stress as Premier, and I feel the weight of delivering for you. We live in a great province. This is an incredible province, It's a beautiful province, 13,000 kilometers of coastline, incredible beaches, cliffs, hiking trails, some of the best golf in the world, what's happening in the valley with our wine, our own Napa Valley of the East, we say. There's a lot good happening in this province. But the best thing about this province is the people, and the people that we have that are trying to move things forward it's absolutely incredible. So there's never a shortage of things to worry about, and I worry about them. But I also have faith in what is possible for this province because of the Nova Scotian spirit, the Blue Noser spirit. So if things get thrown at us, we'll keep going forward, and as your government, The budget we have before the House invests in you and your family. It invests in healthcare. It invests in education. It invests in housing. It invests in the things that you told me you want us to be focused on, and that's where we're focused. So thanks for tuning in tonight, and look forward to seeing you around and having a chat on the street or doing this again next time. But I appreciate your interest in this, and your comments and questions have an impact on me. So thank you for raising them. But have a great night, everyone. Thank you.